Krishna Hari Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jom Vishnupada Paramahamsa Paramahansa Stuta Saraswati Srimati Srengara Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. इस कॉन्सेंस तब का श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रत्यक्ष अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद लकोर किशोर दास महाराज की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद सच्चिदानंद श्री भक्तिविनोद ठाकुर की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास महाराज की जय जय श्री रूप सनातन पट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय नमाचार्य दास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कोई शिक्षण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री वैदिक दादा शिवशादी गौर भक्तिवंत की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोकुल श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड के गोवर्धन के जय श्री श्री गौरांगी बेंगलोरीश्वर भगवान की जय शिमायपुर धाम की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय गंगा मई की जय उमन की जय भक्ति देवी की जय तुलसी देवी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद भागवतम की जय इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरु वंदे की जय समावित भक्त वंदे की गौरव प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द असेंबल्ड डिवोटीज all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all goes to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudire, Ashtaprayeshu Apatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtigi. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all to the Saturday morning Srimad Bhagavatam summary study. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 32, the first half of the chapter. Just to recap what has been discussed so far in the previous chapters so that we are well connected, I'll give a small brief. It starts with Mother Devahuti asking Lord Kapila as to regarding the path of liberation. Kapil Dev replies that Adhyatmika Yoga is the means of achieving liberation. And then in the 25th chapter, we see he explains briefly about Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, etc. Then Devahuti wanted to perform Bhakti Yoga, but at the same time, she wanted to know a little more about Jnana Yoga and also Ashtanga Yoga so that she can understand why Bhakti Yoga is more superior. I mean, not that she doesn't know, but this narration is an example for us to understand how Bhakti Yoga is better than Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. So Kapil Dev again speaks more about Bhakti Yoga, but mostly on the outcome of the practice of Bhakti Yoga, that is Prayojana. Then he starts to explain in chapter 26 and 27 about Jnana Yoga. And in the 28th chapter, he focuses on Ashtanga Yoga. And in the 29th chapter, Mother Devahuti asked more about Bhakti Yoga, the influence of how time affects material nature, the living entities, and also about the transmigration of living entities from one to the other. So Kapil Dev explains about pure devotional service and mixed devotional service. That is devotional service in the modes, three modes, that is modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, and the nature of time. In the 30th chapter, Kapil Dev explained about samsara, how the living entities take up sinful life, and how he leads a distressful life due to sinful activities, and also suffers even after death in hellish planets. And in the 31st chapter, Kapil Dev explains about after suffering in hellish planets, how they take birth again in this material world, take up a human form of life, and also the living entity prays when he's in the womb of his mother. So as he grows, the living entity gets a choice of association, and then the nature of death and the polar of life. Now, in this 32nd chapter, he will explain about the path of those who take up the path of Vedic rituals and also fruitive activities and compare them with bhakti. So we start with sloka number 1. Kapila Uvacha Atayo Grihamedihan Dharman Eva Vasangrihe Kamam Artham Cha Dharman Swan Dogdi Bhuya Pipartitan. Translation. The personality of Godhead said, the person who lives in the center of household life derives material benefits by performing religious rituals, and thereby he fulfills his desire for economic development and sense gratification. Again and again, he acts the same way. So actually, this sloka starts with explaining about the two types of householders. Mostly, this chapter focuses on Grihamedi. So there are two types of householders. One is Grihastha, who have in their center the practice of self-realization, and Grihamedis, who basically live for sense gratification. The Grihasthas live with self-realization in their focus. So the Lord here describes that a person who lives here, in fact, the sloka 1 to 4 describes mostly about those workers who are attached to the results of fruitive activities. So the Grihamedis, generally they perform activities even based on Shastras, which are given in scriptures, but then they are attached to the results. So they want to enjoy the results of the activities that they perform. So here Lord Kapila says that the person who lives in the center of household life derives material benefits by performing religious rituals. Now, there are so many rituals that are given in the scriptures, and thereby he has some aim for performing these rituals like economic dharma. We say purusharthas normally, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So here we will discuss about dharma, artha, kama. Dharma means he practices religion to get some economic gain, that is artha, and after getting economic gain, he wants kama, that is sense enjoyment. And finally, of course, the fourth one is liberation, which we'll come to later. Liberation is not the ultimate goal of life. So people perform these fruitive activities based on what is given in the scriptures to attain some economic benefit, because Shastras mentioned by doing this, you get this benefit. By doing that, you get that benefit. And finally, after that, when he gets the benefit, he wants to enjoy life, which is his goal of life. So they want such type of householders, they want to remain in this material world, and they only want to enjoy the material benefits by performing this, with the goal of ultimately satisfying their senses. And they work very hard through their life to become very rich and eat very nicely and drinks. So eating, mating, sleeping, and defending, this is their goal of life. Then they may give some charity for pious activities by which they can go to higher planetary systems in the next life. But they don't want to understand what is the goal of life, that is to stop the cycle of repetition of birth and death. So they are called Grihamedis. Whereas a Grihastha, in a nutshell, is a person who lives with family, wife, children, and relatives, but he has no attachment for them. He prefers to live in the family life rather as a mendicant, as a renounced person, or a sannyasi. Not necessarily a sannyasi, but in the form of renunciation. But his aim is to attain self-realization or to become or come to the standard of Krishna consciousness. So from here, Lord Kapila speaks in the up to 4 slokas about the Grihamedis who have made their aim materialistically prosperous life, and which they achieve by performing sacrificial ceremony. You see that many times we see people perform homa. They perform charities, and they may give some donation to school, hospital, and all those things. They may do some good work like gardening. And so, these days every corporate has introduced activities to go and clean up somewhere. These are all called good work. They all give some results. It's not that they go without any results. But the person who does this he is expecting these results and want to enjoy, if not in this life, next life. They are normally placed in good positions, and they are using up their pious activities for the process of sense gratification. So Prahlad Maharaj, in fact, which Prabhupada mentions in the purport, there is a quote from Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, where Prahlad Maharaj says, Puna Puna Charvita Charvaranam. That means they prefer to chew that which is already chewed. Material activity itself is like something that is chewed. And if one wants to try to enjoy the results of those activities, again, like somebody has already chewed and throw it up, and we trying to chew it again and try to taste something out of it. So in the process of all these, they suffer material pangs also. They have a lot of sufferings. So enjoyment in the material means is always followed with suffering. It is not that one will only enjoy, but it has also got a lot of sufferings. So even if they are rich and prosperous, they don't want to give up this kind of a material life because they want to enjoy. So they perform their prescribed duty. Prescribed duties are those that are mentioned in the Shastras, and they want to enjoy this, but they don't want devotional service to the Lord. Text number 2. I will recite only the important slokas. Maybe we may not, if we have subject to time. Second sloka, Kapil Dev says, such persons are ever bereft of devotional service due to being too attached to sense gratification, and therefore, although they perform various kinds of sacrifices and take great vows to satisfy the demigods and forefathers, they are not interested in Krishna consciousness and devotional service. So, Srila Prabhupada gives a quote in Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text 20, where Lord says, I'll just read the translation. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. We'll understand something from this. Now, who worships the demigod here? Krishna clearly explains to Arjuna that those who have material desires, in our Shastras, there are so many demigods. People normally call them as gods, but they are all demigods because there can be only one God, that is Krishna. Rest all are like you have in a cabinet, you have the prime minister, then you have so many ministers, somebody in charge of water, somebody in charge of electricity. Like that, each 33 crore demigods are there. Each one is got their own responsibilities, and they all cannot work independently, but they can only work depending. They also depend on Krishna for whatever benedictions they give. So in the Shastra, they mentioned that if you do this ritual, Vedic ritual, you can go to a higher planetary system and enjoy a higher standard of living. This is what their understanding is, which is true also. So these are called less intelligent people, as per what Lord Krishna says, because what the demigods offer is temporary. They are also temporary because demigods don't live an eternal life. Eternal life is only in the spiritual world, which is free from birth, death, old age, and disease. And the spiritual life in eternity is full of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. But material life means suffering, the material miseries, maybe some happiness, depending upon the type of pious activities one performs. So materialistic person like these Grihamedis, they have multiple demands. So the Shastras mention that if you want higher education, you should worship. Like if you see, yearly once people worship Goddess Saraswati Devi for intelligence, so that the child gets intelligence, etc. But after that, the worship is over. So Saraswati Devi may bestow some benediction, but that also she cannot do without taking that benediction from Krishna. So whatever demigods give, that benediction also is given by the Supreme Lord only, and they pass it on to the one who is worshipping the particular demigod. But this sloka says, what is the destination of those? These Grihamedis, they want to continue this materialistic way of life, and they worship demigods or even the forefathers. You see, many people offer pinda, they do shraddha, etc., and they offer oblations to them. And these type of Grihamedis are bereft of Krishna consciousness, and they are not interested in devotional service to the Lord. And then Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, what is the cause of this type of worship of demigods and forefathers, etc. There are many who may be pious or may be leading some religious life, but they believe in impersonalism. They think that God does not have a form, God does not have a name, or all their gods are the same. That means they treat all demigods as God only. So they have a concept that if they worship Goddess Kali and offer her meat once in a year and then offer it to Goddess, that is the worship of Supreme Lord Himself, which is wrong. It's a wrong conception. In fact, Goddess Kali herself does not eat meat. She is a great Vaishnavi, and her followers, who are Pisachas and hobgoblins, they may eat that meat which is offered to her. But these type of worshippers, they believe that worshipping any demigod is as good as worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So these type of worshippers are called less intelligent, and they are condemned as per Bhagavad Gita. So these people perform these duties as per what the Shastras has described. Why the Shastras has described is, the reason is that, for example, if you understand Bhagavad Gita, the understanding is that there are two processes of achieving the ultimate aim of life. Goal of life is to get liberation from the material world, that is, get free from the cycle of birth and death. One can take up the direct process by taking to worshipping Krishna, but those who worship demigods with a lot of faith, etc., they go to the next step, and they may perform karma and enjoy results. That karma yoga will one time lead them to jnana yoga, and then which may lead them to dhyana yoga, which may one time lead to bhakti yoga, which is a step-by-step process. So Shastras give these options because everybody cannot take up the direct process, because they want immediate results. Immediate results you can't get even in material life, that you work today and become a CEO, it doesn't happen. So this is what material life, but people don't realize. Text number 3. Kapil Dev says, such materialistic persons, attracted by sense gratification and devoted to the forefathers and demigods, can be elevated to the moon, where they drink an extract of the Soma plant. They again return to this planet. So what happens to those who worship the demigods and these forefathers? They get elevated to a planet. There are many heavenly planets in heaven. One of them is moon. And there is something called a Soma Rasa in the moon planet, which is something not necessarily an alcohol, but something close to, like people drink alcohol, get intoxicated and so forth. So drinking the Soma juice gives a long life, etc. And they think that they are enjoying life there. But Shastras explain that such people, who, even though they may go to moon planet, their stay in that moon planet is not permanent. It is only as long as one has got some pious activities accumulated to their credit in their whatever they have done in this life or the previous life. But once that results of the pious activities are exhausted, they come back again to this planet. That is what this sloka mentions. Moon is also considered as one of the heavenly planets. And there is a mention about the duration of the life there. Like 10,000 years in the moon planet is a calculation of lifetime. That is, the calculation is 6 months in a life day is equal to 1 day in moon planet. Similarly, the lifespan in moon planet is 365 days and 100 years. It comes to many millions and trillions of years. So, but the point is that in spite of being promoted to the moon planet, they have to come back to this earth again when the merits of their sacrifice are finished. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, where Lord explains in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, text 21, he says, when they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the 3 Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So those who follow, these are mentioned in the Vedas. The Vedas, there are 4 different types of Vedas. Here there's mentioned about 3 Vedas, which mention more about the Karma Kanda activities. Karma Kanda means these Karma Kanda activities say that by you, one of the activities may be like people perform Sandhya Vandana. So like that, there are so many rituals. All these are called Karma Kanda activities, that is fruitive activities, which is mentioned in the Vedas. So this is what is called a step-by-step process for advancement to the ultimate goal. But many times what happens is that people get stuck in one of the places. They may get stuck in Karma Yoga because they are very happy to do that and enjoy life, go to moon and come back, but again do fruitive activities, or they may persuade Jnana Yoga, speculative knowledge. And again, we'll discuss that also in the coming slokas. Text number 4. Kapil Dev then says, all the planets of the materialistic person, including all the heavenly planets, such as the moon, are vanquished when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, goes to his bed of serpents, which is known as Ananta Shesha. So here there is a mention as to how all the planets that are there in the heaven, they are also vanquished when there is a devastation. Now this devastation, there are 2 types of devastation. One devastation is when Lord Brahma goes to sleep every day. We also go to sleep every day, like that Lord Brahma also goes to sleep. That is called a partial devastation. Brahma also lives for 100 years for his lifespan, which comes to more than 311 trillion years or something like that, based on our earthly planet calculation. So that Brahma Loka also is subject to restriction. When the final annihilation takes place, then all the planets in the material world are destroyed. And even one who takes birth and attains Brahmaloka, in fact, there's a mention in the Shastras that one who performs Varnasrama Dharma for 100 cycles, 100 births, can get a birth as in Brahmaloka. And then, of course, the Brahmaloka is also subject to devastation. So when the final devastation takes place, then even Brahmaloka is annihilated. The only solution for all this is approaching the Supreme Lord Krishna, and by which one can enter Vaikuntha Loka and become free from the cycle of birth and death. But the Grihamevis, or the householders who follow these principles, they are averse to this because they want to enjoy the fruits as much as possible. So they would prefer to transmigrate perpetually from one body to another, or from one planet to another. If see, there are many, we'll come to the yogis also. There are many yogis who perform a lot of gymnastics. They go to heavenly planets, but at the same time, they also come back because, as we will see in the future slokas, unless and until one takes up the path of devotional service, whether it is karmis or jnanis or yogis, they all have to come back to this material world. So at the time of devastation, everyone enters into the body of Garbhodaka Vishnu, who lies on the Garbhodaka ocean, who is also called Anantasesha. This is in the dissolution which is partial. In the other dissolution which occurs at the Brahma's lifespan, there all the demigods, all the planets, and all the living, everybody is annihilated. But they all enter into the body of Mahavishnu. Next, so this is how those who worship forefathers and demigods, they enter the cycle of birth and death again and again. Text number 5. Here, Kapil Dev says, those who are intelligent and are of purified consciousness are completely satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Freed from the modes of material nature, they do not act for sense gratification. Rather, since they are situated in their own occupational duties, they act as one is expected to act. So here, the Lord explains about those who don't try to enjoy a fruitive result. That is, there are 2 types of personalities. One is called Sakama Karma Yogis, those who want to enjoy the results of their activities. And the other one is Nishkama Karma Yogis, who don't want to enjoy the results, rather they offer the results to Krishna. So here, those type of living entities who are offering the results to Krishna, it is mentioned that they are the intelligent class of people, and their consciousness is purified because they are situated in Krishna consciousness. So because they are freed from the modes of material nature, they do not act for sense gratification. Rather, they are situated in the occupation duties and they act as expected to act. That means they act as per what the Shastras mention, but they offer the results to Krishna. One example is given about Arjuna. Arjuna was a Kshatriya. Initially, he did not want to fight because it was for his sense gratification. But later, when he heard Bhagavad Gita from Lord Krishna, he agreed to fight for this satisfaction of senses of Krishna. So this is an example as to of how one offers the results to Krishna. They are all who perform the prescribed duties, but for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. And they are also called Nissanga. That means they are free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. And their qualities are given. What are their qualities who perform activities and offer the results to Krishna? One is they are prashanta. That means they are completely satisfied. Because they are offering the results to Krishna, they don't have any expectation. So they are peaceful, they are always satisfied. Then they are Shuddha Chetasa, that means they are Krishna consciousness. Their consciousness has become purified. And in impurified consciousness, one thinks of himself as the Lord of the universe. That means when one is contaminated by three modes of material nature, he thinks that I am the Lord of all that I survey, all that I see. And they consider themselves to be eternal servant of Krishna. In fact, that is our constitutional position by nature. And as long as one works for sense gratification, one is always full of anxiety. So that is the difference between ordinary consciousness and Krishna consciousness. And these people don't perform dharma for artha or kama. Text number 6. Further, Lord Kapila says to Mother Devahuti, by executing one's occupational duties, acting with detachment and without a sense of proprietorship or false egoism, one is posted in one's constitutional position by dint of complete purification of consciousness, and by thus executing so-called material duties, he can enter easily into the kingdom of God. So, when one executes his duties based on the scriptures and acts with detachment, that means he's not trying to own the results, and he does not have a sense of proprietorship also, nor does he have any false ego that I am I and mine. He doesn't have that. Such a person is situated in his constitutional position because his consciousness is purified. He is situated in his constitutional position. What is our constitutional position? To be the servant of, eternal servant of Krishna, which is always there and it will never go, because that is, the soul is a part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. Just like the hand is meant for serving the body, the soul is meant to serve the super soul. So here Srila Prabhupada mentions about two types of activities or two types of religious performances. One is called Pravritti Dharma, which means that the religious activities performed by the Grihamedis for elevation to higher planets, which we discussed. And the other one is Nivritti Dharma, where one is constantly engaged in executing religious activities for detachment. So here, in this case, there are people who perform the Vedic rituals as per what is mentioned in the Shastras, but they are detached and offer the results to the Supreme Lord. So they are not bound by the reactions of these activities. Nor do they are fully engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness. They don't have any proprietorship, nor do they have false ego. So this is what is the stage of purified consciousness. And it is only with this purified consciousness can one return back to the kingdom of God, which is our original place from which we actually belong to. But materialistic people who perform materialistic activities and are attached to the results are all subject to dissolution over and over again. Text number 7. Through the path of illumination, such liberated persons approach the complete personality of Godhead who is the proprietor of the material and spiritual worlds and is the supreme cause of their manifestation and dissolution. So there are two parts of living this material world. One is the path of illumination and the other is the path of darkness. The path of illumination is by leaving one's body through the sun planet. That means one goes to the sun planet, and from sun planet one goes to the spiritual world. But the proprietor of all these material as well as spiritual world is Lord Krishna, and he is the supreme cause of the manifestation as well as dissolution. So the illuminated path is performing devotional service. So it is advised in the scripture that one should not leave their body through the path of darkness, but should pass through the sun planet. This is for basically karmakandis who are performing fruitive activity, but they are offering the results to Krishna. It is also recommended that by traversing the illuminated path, one can be freed from the contamination of the three modes of material nature. Now, here there is a small mention about how all the living entities like us, we are all very minute part and parts and parcels. We may think at some point that I'm a very great person. Actually, we are insignificant. Everyone is infinitesimal. And therefore, in the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is called the Supreme Eternal among all eternal. We are also eternal. The soul is eternal. The Lord is also eternal. And the Lord is the proprietor of all the material and spiritual worlds. This material energy, what we are there, the material manifestation is the cause of material energy, and that energy is also one of the energies of the Lord. Just as a combination of father and mother, the result is childbirth. So the combination of the material energy and the glance of the Supreme Lord is the cause of this manifestation of this material world. So the Lord glances at this material nature and creates this manifestation. But the efficient cause, therefore, is not matter, but the Supreme Lord himself. Now, through the path of sunlight, what happens is that one can attain Brahmajyoti. That means people are working, putting results, offering to the Lord, but they are not developed love of Godhead, which is the ultimate motive of which one should achieve. So what happens, those who have not perfected, they can achieve, enter Brahmajyoti through the path of sun. Now, Brahmajyoti is the glaring effulgence covering the body of the Lord. It is just like you see a tube light. We have so much of light glaring from the tube light, but the tube light emanates from the tube. So this Brahmajyoti also is the first initial stage of realization of the Supreme Lord. Lord can be realized as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So that Brahman is a glowing effulgence of the Lord, and it's like a light. So people believe that God has no form; he is only light, but it's just an effulgence covering the actual body of the Lord. So that is what is called Brahmajyoti. But what happens in Brahmajyoti is, when one enters Brahmajyoti, there is no activity there, because constitutionally we are bound to serve, but because we have not attained that position of servitorship, which we will discuss in the coming slokas, they have to come back again after remaining in some time for Brahmajyoti, and they are try to attain jnana in this process. Now, in Brahmajyoti, because there is no activity, one tends to get frustrated. It's just like if you're sitting within the four walls of a room without any activity, you want to come out of the room. That is what life in Brahmajyoti is. So they stay for some time, and then because of frustration, they want to come back again to this material world because they are not constitutionally placed. So now we come to text number 8. Worshippers of the Hiranyagarbha expansion of the personality of Godhead remain within this material world until the end of 2 Parardas, when Lord Brahma also dies. So here, some important points. We'll understand what this Hiranyagarbha worship is. Hiranyagarbha worship is basically worship of the universal form of the Lord, or the worship of the Virat Rupa of the Lord. This Virat Rupa or universal form is only in this material world, and it's an imaginary form for those who consider that the Lord does not have a form. So for them to have some conception that the Lord has got form, this universal form is manifested so that they can understand that the Lord has got a form and all the demigods are all part and parcel of that universal form. And then, like I mentioned, that Lord Brahma also has got duration in this thing. Brahma dies at the end of 2 parardas. So 1 pararda is Brahma's day. Day means the entire lifespan of Brahma is divided into 2, which is called 1 pararda. So at the end of 2 parardas, that is combined with all the days and nights of Brahma's lifespan, at that time Brahma's life also comes to an end, at which time the entire cosmic manifestation is dissolved. At the end of Brahma's day, there is a partial annihilation. That means all the lower planetary systems are dissolved. But at the end of Brahma's life, all the planetary systems, including the upper planets, are dissolved. So those who worship the planetary, who are worshippers of Hiranyagarbha, that Hiranyagarbha is also an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for this material world. So they do not directly approach the personality of Godhead in Vaikuntha. They remain within the universe on Satyaloka or other higher planets until the end of life of Brahma. That means those who worship the universal form, they remain in Satyaloka, and after they this complete dissolution, they go with Brahma to Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. They do not directly approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then with Brahma, they are elevated to the spiritual kingdom. This spiritual kingdom is not the Vaikuntha which we are speaking about. This is again Brahma Jyoti. Now, they think that they are all, now here, they are Krishna consciousness. But this refers to the complete category. That means they don't worship the direct personality of Godhead, but they worship the universal form. And they enter the Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, not the spiritual planet. And these Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, 3 manifestation, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, Kshirodakasaya Vishnu, they are the cause of manifestation. Garbhodakasaya Vishnu is one who is situated as the super soul in each and every universe, material universe. It is not a spiritual form. So they remain within this universe until its total dissolution. After that, they enter Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. And these worshippers of Virat Rupa are called Kramamuktas, who worship Virat Rupa without devotion to Vishnu. They don't have devotion to Vishnu, but they worship either Garbhodakasaya Vishnu or Kshirodakasaya Vishnu, but they worship the Virat Rupa, and sometimes they worship Lord Brahma. We'll classify in the next sloka further. So they enter into, along with Brahma, when Brahma's lifespan comes to an end, they enter into Garbhodakasaya Vishnu and after again come back at the next creation. Text number 9. After experiencing the inhabitable time of the 3 modes of material nature, known as 2 parardas, Lord Brahma closes the material universe, which is covered by layers of earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, ego, etc., and goes back to Godhead. So at the end of Brahma's life, he enters the body of Mahavishnu. If he becomes a devotee of Krishna, he enters the spiritual planet. Otherwise, he enters into Brahma Jyoti and comes back again. Now, we will have a small repeat of this so that we have a better understanding. Maybe the next sloka, yeah, it's there after 11. So we'll read one more sloka, text number 10. The yogis who become detached from the material world by practice of breathing exercises and control of the mind reach a planet of Brahma, which is far, far away. After giving up their bodies, they enter into the body of Lord Brahma, and therefore when Brahma is liberated and goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Brahman, such yogis can also enter into the kingdom of God. So here, till now we discussed about the karma yogis. Now this sloka mentions about the dhyana yogis. There are many yogis who practice a lot of gymnastic exercises and all those things. These days, it is more of a gymnastic. But the real dhyana yoga is one by which one tries to meditate on the Paramatma feature of the Lord. I mentioned there are 3 stages of realization. Brahman is the first, which is impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Second is Paramatma. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. So the yogis try to meditate on the four-handed form of the Lord. Such yogis also, they can go maximum up to the Brahmaloka. After they give up their material bodies, when the final dissolution takes place, they have to wait till Brahma is liberated. Brahma is also liberated only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Brahma cannot liberate any of the living entities, or rather those who worship. There are many who worship the Brahma as the Supreme Lord. Even Lord Brahma cannot give liberation to them also. So as long as, the conclusion is, as long as one is a worshipper of a particular demigod, his consciousness is always absorbed in the thoughts of that demigod, and therefore he cannot get liberated from this material world. Nor can he even enter the Brahma Jyoti for long. Such yogis who practice are subjected to the chance of taking birth again in this material world when there is again a creation. So, just briefly summarize what has happened so far. In material world, for those who take the sinful life, they go to hell and they come back again to this material world after suffering in hell and take birth in this material world. For Sakama Karma Yogis, which we discussed in the beginning of the chapter, these are Karma Yogis who are attached to the results. They go to heaven and come back to the material world. Now, Nishkama Karma Yogis, those who are not attached to the results of their activities, they attain impersonal Brahma Jyoti. And they come back again to this material world because they are suffocated. The Virat Rupa worshippers, which I mentioned, they have two types. There are two types of worshippers. One, without devotion, enter the body of Mahavishnu and come back to this material world. But there are some Virat Rupa worshippers, they have some worship, but they remain in Satyaloka until their bhakti is complete and they become fully engaged in devotional service, are situated in the eternal position. They come back again to this material world after dissolution and attain liberation when Brahma attains liberation. That Brahma also needs to be liberated from this material world. Otherwise, as long as he is there in this cycle, he also takes birth and comes back again. Maybe as Brahma, may not be as Brahma. And then, lastly, the yogis also attain Brahma Jyoti. So far we have seen that either people go to the lower planets for suffering or higher planets for enjoying, and they come back again, or they enter Brahma Jyoti and again come back to the material world. Now, in the text number 11, Kapil Dev says, Adatham Sarva Bhutanam Krit Padmeshu Kritalayam Sutanubhavam Sharanam Vrajabhavena Bhamini. He says, therefore, my dear mother, by devotional service, take direct shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart. So therefore, here, Lord Kapila is concluding and says, therefore, my dear mother, take up to devotional service to direct and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart. So the only solution to be free from this material world is to surrender to the Supreme Lord by the process of devotional service, by which one can become free from the cycle of birth and death. So here Srila Prabhupada mentions about one can become directly connected to the Supreme Lord in full Krishna consciousness and revive one's eternal relationship with him as a lover, as a Supreme Soul, as a son, as friend or master. That means every living entity has got a relationship with the Supreme Lord, that either as a lover or as a son or as a friend or a master. These are the basic rasas that are mentioned in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sakya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, Madhurya Rasa, and so forth. And one can revive and re-establish this transcendental loving relationship with the Lord in many ways. That means through the process of bhakti. There's also a mention of how Mayavadi philosophers, they think that they and the Lord are same. They believe that they are same with the Supreme Lord and they claim to be God. And the Lord does not have a form. Whereas the Vaishnava philosophers, they think that they are subordinate to the Lord and they have a separate identity as a lover or parent or servant and they want to serve the Lord. So this is the difference between Mayavada philosophers and Vaishnava philosophers. The Mayavada philosophers think that the servant and the master are one. In one sense, yes, they are one, but the servant and servitor, they both have a different constitutional position, that the servant is meant to serve the supreme. So Kapil Dev is addressing Mother Devahuti to take up directly the process of devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Because the Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Devi Esam Punamai Mamamaya Dhuratya. Only one to one who is surrendered unto me, he can become free from Maya, which is the energy that is binding a living entity in this world, because Maya is very, very powerful. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura, one of the acharyas in our Sampradaya, he concludes saying that surrender unto Supreme Lord with love is the only means to be established in relationship with the Lord in one of the rasas, that is Sakya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, or Madhurya Rasa. Next, we go to text number 12 to 15. It's a long thing. I'll read the translation. My dear mother, someone may worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a special self-interest, but even demigods such as Lord Brahma, great sages such as Sanat Kumara, and great munis such as Marichi have to come back to the material world again at the time of creation, when the interaction of the three modes of material nature begins. Brahma, who is the creator of this cosmic manifestation and who is full of Vedic knowledge, and the great sages who are the authors of the spiritual path and the yoga system, come back under the influence of the time factor. They are liberated by their non-fruitive activities and they attain the first incarnation of the Purusha. But at the time of creation, they come back in exactly the same forms and positions as they had previously. So this, in a sense, concludes as to what all have been mentioned previously with some more examples. So here, Lord Kapila says, someone may worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a special interest, but even demigods such as Lord Brahma, great sages as Sanat Kumara, you all know the Kumaras, four Kumaras, and Munis such as Marichi and great rishis, they also have to come back to the material world at the time of creation. When the interaction of the three modes of material nature begins, Brahma, who is the creator and who is full of Vedic knowledge, Brahma is known as Veda Garbha. He is fully well versed in the Vedas. And also the great sages who are authors of the spiritual path and those who follow the yoga system come back under the influence of time factor. That means those who have even fruitive activities and even those who offer results to Krishna, but they have not developed their relationship with the Lord in one of these rasas by developing love for Krishna. Ultimately, the point is that one must surrender to Krishna and develop love for Krishna. Other than that, anybody who is false in any of these categories, they have to come back to this material world to be situated by placing themselves in devotional service in one of the rasas. Then only one becomes eligible to go back to Godhead. So what happens to these living entities who have not completed? They come at the time of creation, they come back in exactly the same forms and position as the Lord, as they had previously. That means Brahma also comes back as Brahma himself in some of the cases. It is mentioned that there are many cases where Brahma is not a devotee of Lord. That means there are universes where Brahma is there as the creator, but at the same time, he is not a devotee of the Lord. There may be universes. But our Brahma is a great devotee of the Lord and he has a sampradaya. Brahma, demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma cannot give liberation to any living entity, whereas only one who surrenders to Krishna can be liberated from Maya. Brahma is always accompanied by great personalities like Marichi, Kashyapa, and the seven sages, as well as by great mystic yogis, the Kumaras. Kumaras were good yogis, and many other spiritually advanced living entities, but they all have their interests separate from the Lord. That means here there is a mention in the purport that many times when they get a particular position, like for example Brahma or Lord Shiva or the four Kumaras or great rishis, when they get a particular position, they start thinking that they are independent of the Supreme Lord. They think that they are as independent as the Lord himself. So this this way of thinking keeps them bound in the material world. Brahma also can think that is independent, and the worshipper also thinks that Brahma is independent. Many people think the Lord Brahma is independent. So they are all bound by this type of thinking because nobody is independent of the Supreme Lord. For this reason only, even after the annihilation, Brahma comes back. So although Brahma reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu, still he cannot stay in the spiritual world for a long time because they all may enter up to Brahma Jyoti, that's all, but they have to come back. Though Brahma and great rishis are great living entities, they are very powerful in various yogas, but still they have an inclination to become one with the Supreme. The first point I mentioned was they think that they are independent of the Supreme Lord. The other thinking is they want to become one with the Supreme, for which they have to come back. That means if one starts thinking that I am God, then what happens is that he has to come back. Nobody can become God. God is only one. That is Krishna. Such people who are contaminated with this, their knowledge is not complete or their knowledge is not completely purified. So after they enter into Mahavishnu's body, they come back again at the next creation. Similarly, impersonalists, they think that the Supreme Lord appears with a material body and they start meditating upon that form of the Lord, which is formless. So it is a great mistake, and so therefore they also come back to this material world. The conclusion is that even great sages and Kumaras, they all have come back if they don't have bhakti. Text number 16. So the most important part to become free is that one must have bhakti. Now, text number 16, Kapila says, persons who are too addicted to this material world execute their prescribed duties very nicely and with great faith. They daily perform all such prescribed duties with attachment to the fruitive result. Here again, Kapila Dev mentions about the fruitive workers. Here there is mention about the rules and regulations which are mentioned in the Vedas. And those who try to attach themselves to the results of the activities, they perform sacrifice and undergo certain ritualistic processes. These ritualistic processes are like one is those who perform some ritual in the Vedas. There's mentioned like about if somebody wants a son, there's a ritual that is meant for that. And if somebody wants a good wife, they worship Uma Devi. There are rituals meant for that. So like that, people have some aim in life, which is separate from the Lord. They have some personal aim. And they are attached to these activities, ritualistic activities. Such type of people, they undergo a lot of sacrifices and perform these ritualistic performances, for which they observe a lot of rules and regulations in their daily lives. So such person, they cannot be liberated at any time. So those who worship demigods with the consciousness that each and every demigod is also a separate god, they also cannot be elevated to the spiritual world. So again, this Kapil Dev is coming back to the Sakama worshippers, and some are like people who perform Sandhya Vandana. See, many people who are born in Brahmana families, they perform rituals like Sandhya Vandana, Madhya Vandana, Sayam Sandhya, and then, but the point is that they don't know what is the purpose for doing the Sandhya Vandana. Ultimately, the Lord says, Vedaisya Sarve Ahamed Vedyo in Bhagavad Gita. I say, the purpose of understanding Vedas is to know me. So if one is following the rituals in the Vedas, but ultimately not knowing the purpose of these Vedas, that is to understand Krishna, it's a waste of time and energy. So there is a mention that due to lack of bhakti, these people also return back to this material world and take birth in the midst of Sakama Karma Yogis. That means those who perform these type of rituals with attachment, they come back to this material world and they take birth in the midst of Sakama Karma Yogis. That means they take birth among the association of those who are attached to fruitive results. So this is the summary. Text number 17. Such persons, impelled by the mode of passion, are full of anxieties and always aspire for sense gratification due to uncontrolled senses. They worship the forefathers and are busy day and night improving the economic condition of their family, social or national life. So those who are performing these type of rituals, they are driven by the mode of passion and they are all full of anxiety. Those who want to achieve anything in this material world, whatever result may be, they are always in anxiety and they want to have sense gratification because their senses are not controlled. So they worship the forefathers. There are many who worship the forefathers and offer pinda, and they are busy day and night trying to improve their economic conditions. Such persons, in the next chapter, the sloka I mentioned, such persons are called Trivargika, translation. Such persons are called Trivargika because they are interested in the three elevating processes. They are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can give relief to the conditioned soul. They are not interested in the Supreme Personality's pastimes, which are worth hearing because of his transcendental prowess. So we will see. Again, these are all Dharma, Artha, Kama. According to Vedic thinking, there are four elevating principles, that is Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So those who are interested in this material enjoyment make plan to execute prescribed duties. These are mentioned in the Vedas themselves, and they may give some economic elevation and also sense enjoyment. So sometimes by worshipping the forefathers, one may become wealthy, but ultimately the point is by offering these oblations, they want to become healthy and enjoy the senses. So materialistic persons, therefore, are those who are interested in elevating materially. They are called Trivargika. Means Tri means three, Vargika means elevating process. Trivargika means they want to elevate themselves in Dharma, Artha, Kama. So such persons, materialistic persons, are never attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, neither to the Lord or his transcendental pastimes. So only one personality who can deliver one from the cycle of birth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And materialistic people are not interested in even hearing about the past wonderful pastimes of the Lord. They think that these are fictions and stories, and the Supreme Godhead is also a man of material nature. So those who worship the forefathers and perform this ritual, they think that the Supreme Lord is also a materialistic person like us. And all those pastimes and all, they consider them as stories or fictions. And they are not fit for advancing in Krishna consciousness. And such type of materialistic persons end up in taking interest in reading newspaper stories, novels, or imaginary dramas. So the newspapers are wonderful enough to give so many nice narrations about what is happening materially in every corner of the world. So people get carried over by taking interest in all these activities. They are not fit for devotion service. But materialistic persons who engage in elevating their positions in the material world who are not interested in such activities alone. They may be interested in activities of a great politician or a great rich man in the world, but they are not interested in the activities of transcendental activities of the Lord. So the Lord's activities are transcendental in nature. So one must have faith in Lord to understand these pastimes and realize these pastimes. All these are transcendental. And if one practices bhakti, one can understand that these pastimes are actually factual. They are not imaginary. So these type of materialistic person are interested in getting a desire fulfilling tree. They want a tree which can give material, fulfill all their material desires. Text number 19. Such persons are condemned by the supreme order of the Lord because they are averse to the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they are compared to stool-eating hogs. They give up hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord and indulge in hearing of the abominable activities of the materialistic persons. So those who perform such ritualistic activities, what happens to them? They are condemned by the Lord himself. And because they are averse to the activities of the Lord, they are compared to stool-eating hogs. The example is given that if a hog is offered some nice preparation made of condensed milk or ghee, he won't like it. He would like to eat that stool which smells very badly, and he relishes that. So such materialistic people are compared to that stool-eating hogs. So everyone is addicted to hearing activities of another materialistic person, whether a politician or a rich man, or if not, imaginary character. Now, why imaginary character is that? See, some time back there was an article of somebody who was trying to uh, copy Superman in Delhi. So this Superman is all something imaginary. There is nothing that exists. So people take interest in either politicians or rich men or such imaginary characters by reading novels and such storybooks. But they don't want to take up interest in reading the Lord's pastimes. But when they take up interest in reading the Lord's pastime, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam or other Puranas, then they become elevated. These persons are condemned by the Supreme Lord as much as a hog is condemned. The hog is a condemned species of life. The materialistic people like this are also considered to be condemned. Text number 20. Here, Lord Kapila mentions, such materialistic persons are allowed to go to the planet called Pitraloka by the southern course of the sun, but they again come back to this planet and take birth in their own families, beginning again the same fruitive activities from birth to the end of life. So here there's a specific mention of those who worship their forefathers. Forefathers means father, grandfather, uncle, aunt, and so forth. Such people who worship the forefathers, there is a planet called Pitraloka, and they enter through the southern coast of the sun. Actually, it is going through the darkness. And what happens? They stay in Pitraloka for some time, but they come back to this planet and take birth in their own families. That means those who worship the forefathers, they take birth in the same family where they were born before, and they start beginning with the same fruitive activities from birth to the end of life. So we see how in each of the sloka, the Lord is giving classification as to what worship one takes to and what is the result of that. This Pitraloka is also is the place where all our forefathers are sent. I mean, those who are not devotees of the Lord, who are performing these type of rituals, they go to this planet called Pitraloka, and they remain there, and they again come back to take birth in the same families. That is why we see that many times people say that uh, somebody is born in a house, they say, yes, he resembles the grandfather or great grandfather or somebody, because all of them, these forefathers, have gone to that Pitraloka, and after finishing their duration of stay in that Pitraloka, they come back again to this material world and start their fruitive activities in the same family. They don't take birth in other family, but they take birth in the same family. So the Vedas, it is mentioned that there are different prescribed rituals from birth until the end of life, and they are these materialistic people are attached to such activities. Text number 21. Kapil Dev says, when the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they fall down by higher arrangement and again come back to this planet. Just as any person raised to a high position, sometimes all of a sudden falls. So here it's mentioned that when the results of one attains this Pitraloka also by some pious activity, by worshipping the forefathers, offering oblations and etc., Shraddha and all these things. This also is a pious activity. And when the pious activities are exalted, what happens? Exhausted, they come back by higher arrangement and come back to this planet, just as any person raised to a high position falls down. So the point is that anyone who is there in this material world, whatever activities they perform, if they perform pious activities, they go higher up. And they perform impious activities, they fall down. And anything that goes up falls back in this material world. So Srila Prabhupada gives an example that how many times people are elevated in government services and all, but all of a sudden they all fall down. So similarly, after finishing that period of enjoyment, foolish persons who are very much interested in being elevated to the position of president in higher planets also fall down to this planet. Many times people have desire, why can't I be a king of that planet, or why can't I be a king of this planet itself? The Lord fulfills those desires also when one performs all these rituals that are mentioned in the scriptures. The difference between a materialistic person and a devotee is that when a devotee is elevated to the spiritual kingdom, he never falls down. Whereas an ordinary person falls even if he is elevated to the highest planet called Brahmaloka. That means even if one attains the highest planet called Brahmaloka, he also tends to fall down. He falls down. Whereas one who is elevated to a spiritual planet does not fall down. So the Srila Prabhupada gives a quote about quote in Bhagavad Gita, Ab Brahma Bhuvana Loka. That means even if one is elevated to the highest planet called Brahmaloka, that also is subject to annihilation. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 16, Mam impetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate. Anyone who attains my abode never comes back to this conditioned life of material existence. That means one who enters the spiritual planet does not take birth in this material world. I'll conclude with text number 22. Tasmattam sarva bhavena bhajasva parame stinam tad gunashraya bhaktya bhajaniya padambujam. Translation says, Kapila says, my dear mother, I therefore advise that you take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for his lotus feet are worth worshipping. Accept this with all devotion and love, for this you can be situated, for thus you can be situated in the transcendental devotional service. So here again, he says tasmat, that means therefore. Kapila Dev is advising his mother, take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Worship his lotus feet because they are worth worshipping. And by worshipping, what happens? One comes to the stage of devotion and love. For thus, one can be situated in transcendental devotional service. So, devotional service is transcendental, Lord is transcendental, the devotee is also transcendental. So, by performing devotional service to the Supreme Lord, by taking shelter of his lotus feet, which are worth worshipping, that means the Lord's lotus feet is the only one that is worth worshipping. So when one starts worshipping by taking up the process of 9 processes of Shavanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. When one takes up all these processes, finally one comes to a stage of Atma Nivedanam. And Atma Nivedanam means full surrender unto the Lord. That surrender takes place and one develops love for Godhead by serving the Lord. We all serve someone or other in the society. We serve our company managers. A wife may serve her husband, wife may serve her children. That servitorship is there in each and everyone because that is a constitutional position. So, but if one serves Krishna, it is as good as serving others because it is mentioned in the Shastras that if by watering the root of a tree, all the branches and all the leaves get watered. So similarly, if one takes to the worship of the Supreme Lord, the worship of all others is automatically taken care of. Whereas one cannot individually water each leaf and each branch. So if one tries to worship a demigod for something, one tries to worship a forefather for something, we'll be in an endless cycle of birth and death, taking up so much of trouble, going to all these different planets and come back again to this material world. But one who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord by surrendering unto him, he becomes free from all fear. He becomes free from the cycle of birth and death. And also he enters into, he attains love of Godhead. Ultimately, the point is that by rendering service to someone, we try to attain love for that personality. For example, somebody might serve their children, but what happens in the process, we end up loving our children. I'm not saying we should not love our children, but by loving the Supreme Lord, love for everyone is attained. But by loving children only, we don't attain love for the Supreme Lord. So by taking shelter of the Lord, one attains love for everybody. And the purpose of devotional service is to attain love of Godhead. So even if one takes to worship of the Supreme Lord, but if he has not attained love of Godhead, by serving the Lord, one has to still continue his cycle in the birth and death cycle in this material world. One should somehow try and see that they serve the Lord in one of the ways by Shravanam, or which start with Shravanam and Kirtanam. When you do Shravanam and Kirtanam, we come to the stage of Vishnu Smaranam. So when we hear and when we do Kirtana, we come to the stage of remembering the Lord. When we remember the Lord always, then what happens? We take up one of the roles as a servant. Either we may want to preach his glories as a preacher, or we may want to serve the Lord in the form of a deity. We take up one of these services, and in the process we develop love for the Lord. And that is the only way to become free from the cycle of birth and death in this material world. So with this, I conclude the class today. And the next slokas will be taken up the next speaker by the next week, in the next week. Anybody has got any questions or comments, they can ask me in the next couple of minutes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Yes, Mataji, tell me.
Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji.
This Sanat Kumaras finally became devotees of Krishna. No, first they were impersonal.
Now the Sanat Kumaras that is mentioned here need not mention about the Sanat Kumaras in this universe. There may be other similar Kumaras in other places also. Yes, ultimately, even the Sanat Kumaras became devotees of the Lord by smelling the tulsi, which is offered, tulsi leaves which are offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. They became personally. This description that I have given does not necessarily mean the description of this particular universe. Like this, there are so many universes that there may be Kumaras, where there is a mention that even Brahmas need not be devotees of the Lord. So, depending on all these fruitive activities, the Lord awards birth in different universes. So, one can become the four Kumaras in some other planets also, and they need not be devotees of the Lord. But our Kumaras, they attain the spiritual planets. Yes.
Okay, so they have attained the spiritual plan. Our Kumaras have attained.
Yes.
Okay, but our Brahma is still alive, no? Then how come Sanat Kumaras have attained? Then
Now, there is definitely a mention here that if you take up to devotional service, you can enter even if Brahma is even if Brahma is not your devotee, but if you are able to become a devotee of the Lord, by surrendering, you can enter the spiritual planet. But Brahma need not if he has not become a pure devotee. And even if Brahma becomes a pure devotee, he cannot give liberation to any of his followers. He can at the most give them mercy as a Vaishnava. He may not, Vaishnavas give mercy to others, so he may assist in a living entity in becoming a devotee of the Lord.
Okay. And one more thing is, the Sanat Kumaras need not have the lifespan of the Brahma.
No.
Okay.
Our lifespan and Brahma's lifespan is different. If we take up to devotional service, we can go back to a spiritual world. But if Brahma is not surrendered fully, he need not go.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. We have to continuously read this chapter again and again. Otherwise, we will forget.
Yes.
Thank you,
we have to continue reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam continuously. Then only we can become perfect.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. The point that you told about people worshipping the forefathers and the ancestors and all.
Yes.
No matter, you do it with perfect devotion. You are appeasing those forefathers and the ancestors. That means they tend to be reborn in the same family. That it was good. You have very explicitly put, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have mentioned what I mentioned in the scriptures. So thank you very much. Anybody else?
Krishna, Prabhuji, I have another doubt, Prabhuji. Then after this, see, now this is Ashada month. Next is the Shravana Mas, and the following month you get that Malaya Amavasya and all, no, Prabhuji. That time, everybody, every Hindu in this world, they definitely they offer their respects to their forefathers and ancestors on the Malaya Amavasya day. So, what explanation can be given, Prabhuji?
Okay, this Ashada, Shravanamasa, all these things are basically for materialistic people. who want to observe these rituals. A devotee who performs devotional service is free from all these auspicious and inauspicious. For him, everything is auspicious because he does everything for the Lord. There is no inauspiciousness because he performs devotional service to the Lord even in Ashara month. So a devotee who performs devotional service is free from all these auspiciousness and inauspicious dualities. These are dualities of the material world, but devotional service is beyond that. So one who performs devotional service is freed from all these rituals automatically. One doesn't have to perform
Prabhuji,
this.
then they don't see muhurtas and all. A devotee need not see muhurta. Suppose they have to get married in the family and all.
If somebody wants to do it, there's nothing wrong in it, but then a devotee is above all these dualities. Muhurtas and yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, you mean to say
Yes,
that
ma'am.
in case I have another doubt. I know it might be sounding very odd, Prabhuji, but these they hanker in my mind. Supposing like this Mahalaya Amavasya, we tend to forget it, or we will not be forgetting because the whole everybody in the neighborhood, they will tell you nimmanella madlilva aita nimmanella idu aita. They will be, I mean, they will be poking and asking, why didn't you do? Have you done everything? Belage snana aita, idu madidira, adu madidira. I mean, there'll be a volley of questions, no, Prabhuji. How to
Yes.
overcome? Yes, I am a devotee. I try to surpass this, and I will not be holding a feeling of guilt should I not be performing and all that, Prabhuji.
One thing is why we are speaking all these from the scriptures is that scriptures clearly mention that if you want to be a karma kandi, observing of these rituals, you can be. But then ultimately, if you are chanting the holy name of the Lord, there is no need to be observing these rituals. Amavalaya, Amavasya. These are all basically karma kanda activities which are performed by materialistic persons. So one should have faith in chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And in fact, there is a sloka in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which mentions that one who takes up the process of devotional service, he becomes free from all his obligations to his forefathers, demigods, and all this. He becomes free from all, provided, of course, he takes up the path, and that is the only one he takes. Otherwise, devotional service can also be performed in three modes, that is goodness, passion, and ignorance. But one should transcend on all these things and perform devotional service only for the satisfaction of the Lord. That is the only goal. So if you are convinced, you will be in a position to convince others also.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, related to this question only, we are following Chaturmas, Prabhuji. It comes in that only, Prabhuji.
Chaturmas, yes, but you must understand what is given in that conclusion. Srila Prabhupada mentions by observing Chaturmas, one can attain love of Godhead. It's an austerity again. Ekadasi is an austerity. Observing Chaturmas is an austerity because we are all used to eating so much very nicely, particularly in ISKCON, eating is one of the opulences. But then what happens when you observe these, at least you become free from all the attachments. So you must understand Chaturmas is not observed as a ritual, but rather as a process to attain love of Godhead. This Srila Prabhupada has mentioned.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. You have cleared a small cloud of doubt. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Traivargika means dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So, dharma, artha, kama. Okay, means those people who are attached to dharma, artha, and kama, right?
Yes. The fourth one is purushartha. When it comes to moksha, it is purushartha.
Okay, so sometimes I get a doubt this. Moksha is the category of Krishna consciousness, or Krishna consciousness is beyond moksha?
Krishna consciousness is beyond moksha. That is called a Panchama Purushartha. That is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam in one of the places. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, Prema. So the Panchama Purushartha is Prema. Okay. That is ultimate thing.
Prabhuji, okay. Hare Krishna. This ISKCON, I get reminders from ISKCON to, for the Mahalya Amavasya that you please contribute some amount for your forefathers. We'll do some puja and all. Why are they doing that then?
I don't know, because generally it is not recommended.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Many times, for example, I mentioned that Vaishnavas also perform few things. For example, we may do an archana in somebody's name. It is not advisable to observe to get some result, but one can do it provided he says, can please give Krishna consciousness to this so and so devotee.
Okay. So
but
that we can just offer it. Okay.
You bring a basket of flowers offered to the Lord, and please ask the Lord's mercy so that you can chant your rounds properly. You can serve the Lord. That is a right
that is
understanding.
Enough. That is enough, no,
Yeah,
Prabhuji?
Yeah, that is enough. That is enough.
Okay. So if we get these kind of messages, just ignore them.
Just ignore that. Sorry, just ignore. You don't have to necessarily do it. All these are a step-by-step process to attain the ultimate goal. If you have attained the ultimate goal, there is no need to go through the step-by-step processes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Just a doubt, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Like Prabhu,
Yes,
then, when as devotees, if we say we don't need to do this thing, then why does Lord Ram do do it for Dashrath Maharaj when he passes? And why is the Guru Puran it is emphasized that you should do it? And another thing, then why in the I don't know, Bhagavatam also it is they who does it in I don't remember. It is, but it is in the Bhagavatam also it comes that the this thing is done. Prabhuji, like then why is it this Karam Kanda, there's so much of emphasis, and why they say that you should, like even Dashrath Maharaj says, like, who will do my Pindidani if I do not have a son? And that is why, like, he's they do the this thing to beget a son.
Okay.
I mean, we say we don't have to do it. As devotees, we understand we don't need to do it. But that is for a sincere, elevated devotee, or people like who are just like we have to follow, or we don't need to follow.
Okay. In a simple answer, I can tell you, unless and until there is a mention of darkness and light, one will not know what is darkness, one will not know what is light. So unless and until there is a mention, Lord being very merciful, has given a path even to materialistic people that they can go progress on a step-by-step process, either by worshipping forefathers or by demigods. There are many who have taken these processes and finally come to the stage of Krishna consciousness also, because demigods also perform the role as a Vaishnava, apart from their role as a demigod. So when one takes shelter of a demigod, asking for a genuine, like it is said in the Shastra that Lord Shiva is the greatest of the Vaishnavas. If somebody approaches Lord Shiva, that please take me to the right path of self-realization, Shiva will not give a material benediction which many ask for. He may lead them to Krishna consciousness, which has happened to many cases. So many became worshippers of Lord Ganesha, but then they came to Krishna consciousness. Because if our desire is genuine, that is mentioned in the Shastras, that how you should worship a demigod, what can you ask from a demigod, or what can you ask from your forefathers. If you ask your forefathers, please bless me with eternity, they will give that, or show me the right path. Even forefathers may help you out. But if our desire is to get something material, in fact, in today's classes, the thing is that if you have any attachment for anything, whether it's by worship of forefathers or demigods or whoever it is, they're all binding their living entities in the material world. So unless and until these are given in the Shastras, how will a common man understand? So the Shastras mention in a nutshell everything that is possible, but then not everybody will take up to the path of devotional service straight away. Some might want to take it, and then many enjoy material results, but then at some point they feel that it's of no use. I'm getting frustrated. For example, what will you do if you get crores and crores of rupees and if you're not able to enjoy it? There are many who have got a lot of wealth, they can't even drink a glass of water. So all these are given the Shastras for that is to understand and realize. And not everybody comes under one umbrella. In fact, the Lord is so merciful, He has covered everybody. whether it's a materialistic person, or is an impersonal worshipper, or is a demigod worshipper, or the Supreme Lord worship. The Lord has given opportunity for everyone to choose their path. That is what it is. And secondly, you asked the question about having a son. Devotees need not worry if they are practicing devotional service, whether they have a son or not. Devotees are free from all these ritualistic understandings. It is not that a son is required to offer oblations for forefathers, but that is also a materialistic activity. But if you are surrendered to Krishna, you don't have to worry because the Lord takes care of such souls. You don't need a son to be delivered if you are a devotee. There's so many examples in the Shastras where the Lord became a son and then delivered the devotee. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, I don't remember the name of the personality, but the Lord came in the form of a son, took the role of a son and delivered the father. So we must have that faith that I have taken to the post of devotional service. I don't necessarily need a son. How many are there today having sons who are not offering oblations? Is it clear, Mataji?
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. Oh, thank you, Prabhu. I mean, but
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, we all know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this material world only.
Yes.
Correct, Prabhuji? Yes. So after Krishna, it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, no, Prabhuji?
Yes.
That is the actual disciplic succession. Correct, Prabhuji?
Yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself.
In this material world, correct, Prabhuji?
He is Godhead himself. So he has come as a covered incarnation.
Okay, Prabhuji. Then when he was born as a human being in this, after Lord Krishna, then who performed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's last rites and all, Prabhuji?
There was no last rite for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is Godhead himself.
Acha.
He just disappeared into that Tota Gopinath's temple, no, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Okay, Prabhuji. So then his material body was not disposed of or anything like that.
He didn't have a material body.
Acha.
One fine day he just disappeared, no?
Yes. It is there in Puri, Tota Gopinath.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Okay, anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Tirtha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
For Mataji question, just there in Puri there is a temple Alarnath. Tota Gopinath.
Yes.
So you can explain that. Can Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suddenly disappeared in that detail?
I already explained.
Okay. I didn't. Sorry, I didn't hear it.
I explained already.
Okay.
Mahaprabhu entered the Tota Gopinath deity and then.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear actually.
Yeah, no issues.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I have another question, Prabhuji. Can
Yes,
we,
Mataji.
if we are wearing a kanti mala, is it right or wrong to visit the bathroom with the kanti mala? Because generally we don't, nobody, even if you go by train and all, no, if you are chanting and all, we should not visit the washroom when we are having.
Kanti mala is okay. Kanti mala is okay.
We give it to somebody. Kanti mala is permitted, Prabhuji.
Yes. Only chanting beads are not permitted.
Are not permitted. Okay, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. I have to keep going for my next activity. So thank you all.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you for answering.
Thank you all very much. Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Dhanvat Prabhu.
Hare Krishna devotees, thank you very much for joining. See you tomorrow.